Thank you so much for joining us on Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. It is my privilege to introduce to you Madai McCain.
Hi, everybody.
I was raised in a pastor's home. I'm married to a pastor, and I am a pastor. I've experienced hurt through criticism, rejection, and the way people have treated my children. We will be discussing these subjects and so much more right here on Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife.
Madai, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I am a wife and a mother. My husband's name is Timothy McCain. He's been an evangelist for a long, long time. We've been traveling for over a decade. We have a 4-year-old and we have a baby on the way. In about 3 weeks or so, I'm going to see my baby girl. So we're really excited about that.
Oh, that's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Has there ever been a time in your ministry that you have felt you were just silently bleeding?
Absolutely. There's been many, many times. I feel like my life has been a story. But just here recently, I went through a crazy season when I was very, very sick. I was in my deathbed pretty much. Hall that I can see maybe people can, you know, you can lose yourself in those seasons. And it
Did,
was just this,
did you say you were on your deathbed?
yes, yes.
Tell me about that.
But I was getting really, really sick. My child was only 2 years old. After I had him, you go through the normal mom stuff, like, gain weight, you gain weight a little bit, fluctuation in that, hormones and all stuff. And I thought it was just normal symptoms of, well, okay, you had a baby, whatever. I started to have it when he was very little, the symptoms, but they started to get progressively worse. And then when he ended up being 2 years old, I started to get these really crazy symptoms. And I had no idea what was going on. One of the really, really crazy symptoms that I was like, okay, what is going on is I was dealing with like depression, which I've dealt with in the past, but it was circumstantial depression, if that makes sense. Because of the way I grew up, because of abuse and stuff like that, I've had depression, but this time it was very different. I felt very hopeless, and I was completely out of my personality. I was very angry, very flustered. It was just very weird. I was not myself at all, and people began to notice, like, okay, something's going on with this girl. Um, but anyway, I started to get sicker and sicker and sicker, and the one thing that really freaked me out was I was starting to have panic attacks, and breathing issues. Like I was having super bad breathing issues, and I've never dealt with any of that stuff like, normally.
Mhm.
I did get sick when I was in my 20s and I was in my deathbed then. I was bedridden for 3 years, but this time yeah. So the symptoms were similar, but they were a little bit different as well. Anyway, it started to get worse and worse and worse. And I had symptoms of over 10 different diseases.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so they could not pinpoint what was wrong with me. And so I ended up going to different doctors. First, I went to my family doctor and she did a whole bunch of tests and stuff. And she kept saying, you just have anxiety, just have anxiety. And I could not accept that. I was like, I'm not like an anxious person per se. Um, how do I have anxiety? What am I having anxiety about? There's nothing, usually anxiety is caused by something. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And I kept going back to her because I was like, well, I don't feel right. This is what's going on. And she kept testing me for different things. She's like, there's nothing wrong with you. I am gonna suggest that you go to the psychiatrist.
mm,
And I'm gonna be honest with you, growing up I grew up in a Christian home. Um, my mom was, very devoted to church. We've always volunteered and stuff like that. And in the Spanish community, we don't talk about mental health like that. You
mm.
know, they say we hear the word psychologist and we're like, no, we rebuke that in the name of Jesus. What? You don't do psychologists. So my first thought was like, no, I'm not doing that. But I started to get desperate because I was just getting worse. Like my depression was getting worse, the panic attacks were getting worse. Anxiety. I had anxiety so bad. I have never felt anxiety like this in my life. Like
Mm.
I literally felt like I was gonna die every day, every single day. Like if you've ever been in a situation where you've had to like the fight or flight, if you ever felt that way, that was me constantly. Like I was in fight or flight mode all the time. So I was like, something's gotta give. So I gave up. I was like, okay, fine. I'll go to the psychologist. I went to the psychologist and she's asking me all these questions and stuff. And she said, well, you just have anxiety. I'm going to suggest that we put you in antidepressants. And I was like, I just didn't feel at peace about it. Not that I'm saying that antidepressants can't help somebody. I just, in my spirit, I was like, something is off. Anyway, my doctor ended up, um, so after I went to a psychologist, I tried different things, and she ended up sending me to the GI doctor, the gastroenterologist, because my stomach, like I would eat and I would feel like if a food or whatever I would eat, no matter what it was, it would cut me from the inside. Like I had razors
Wow.
in my stomach. My digestive system was a complete mess. I lost so much weight. I was at one point I was on my highest weight that I've ever had in my whole entire life. Again, thinking it was because I had a child,
Mm.
that I was overeating from having a child, whatever. But I was on my highest weight, and then all of a sudden I started dropping more and more and more and more, and I got to a point that I almost looked like skin and bones, like it was really bad.
Mhm.
um, so they took me to the GI doctor, and they were like, they did an endoscopy and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. We see inflammation, but that's pretty much it. There's nothing wrong. So I was losing hope. I'm like, I know there's something wrong. My body's physically manifesting something. And they keep, yes, ma'am.
Madai, did one of the doctors tell you nothing was wrong with you? You were just crazy?
They were all telling me that. They were all saying that because so after the GI doctor, I went to an endocrinologist because I thought maybe it was my hormones, because I was displaying a lot of hormonal imbalances and things like that. And hormones can cause a lot of things, unfortunately, for women.
Yeah.
We deal with hormones. And so I went to the endocrinologist, and he straight up told me, he said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're crazy. You
Mm.
just need to go to the psychologist. So I got told, I went to the ER 10 times, about 10 times in less than like 6 months. It was horrible. Yeah, and I kept getting all these tests done. Finally, someone's like, well, you have gallstones, but we don't know if gallstones is what's causing all these issues, but it could be. Who knows? And I was about to get surgery to get my gallbladder removed, thinking it was my gallbladder. Anyway, long story, I did not feel at peace about that. I kept praying. I'm like, Lord, I don't know. I just don't feel like this is what it is. Tell me what it is, Lord. It was not my gallbladder either. And they kept telling me I was crazy. And I was about to go on antidepressants. I did start taking them. But I started to have worse panic attacks than before.
Mm.
To me, it was not helping me. I was on anti-anxiety medication for a while, but it was only helping me for a little bit, but it was getting just worse and worse and worse, and my body was almost getting used to it. Yeah, so after all of this, I kept asking, I'm like, Lord, you're gonna have to give me an answer. I was very angry at the Lord. I'm like, I know you're a God that heals. Why aren't you healing me?
Mm.
uh I was like, I've seen you heal other people. You used me in ministry to be able to pray for others. I've seen their healing. Why aren't you healing me? Like, I have a son, I have a husband that I have to take care of. My kid needs me. Why aren't you healing me? And I just literally asked the Holy Spirit, to tell me what it was that was going on. um and one time I was sitting there so depressed, so depressed. I'm gonna be honest here, and a lot of the times we don't want to talk about stuff like this, but in the middle of all that, um I had suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was depressed. I was having panic attacks. I literally thought, I don't want to live with panic. And I do care for my husband, about my child, but I do not want to live in panic and fear for the rest of my life. And I kept asking the Lord, you know what, Lord, if you're not going to heal me, can you just take me now? Because I can't. The enemy was very bold in that season. I literally heard him very clearly one time wake me up from the very little sleep I was getting and tell me, just kill yourself.
Oh, wow.
Just kill yourself because God is not going to heal you.
Mm.
And I remember I was like, this is not my thought. This is not me. And I got up and I started rebuking the enemy. I'm like, you got the wrong one. You got the wrong one. Well, I'm not doing that. But I remember how bold he was in that season, speaking lies over me and just whispering these lies. And a lot of the times I did entertain the lies because that was the only real thing at that point for me. The lies were real, but faith was not, because it was just so far-fetched for me at that point, because it was like my healing was just so far away, you know. But I did end up asking the Holy Spirit, and he told me, walk to your garage. And I'm like, okay. I walked to my garage, and he's like, look into the air conditioning system. And I'm like, what am I looking for? He's like, it's mold. And I'm like, no, it can't be. It can't be mold. Something so simple, it can't be. And I went and looked, and the whole entire AC system was full of black mold.
Wow. Wow.
And I asked my family doctor, could mold cause this? She said, no, absolutely not. One of my friends, in the midst of trying to get my gallbladder removed, she's like, don't do it, don't do it. She's like, talk to this doctor, he's gonna help you. He's a natural doctor. Let's see what he says. Anyway, they connected me to a natural doctor. I got some tests done, I got some blood work stuff done, and they found it everywhere in my body, specifically my brain. It
And
was
what is
just,
it they found?
I am allergic to mold,
Okay.
like deadly. I
And
didn't,
all throughout your body.
yeah, so my body cannot naturally detox from mold. And it was just living and thriving in my body. It was in my stomach, it was in my lungs, it was in my brain, it was in my skin. Like
Wow.
I kept thinking, why is my skin shedding? Like I almost looked like I was shedding skin like a snake, my hair was falling, like chunks of hair when I would take showers. I would cry in the shower because my hair was just falling, and I'm like, I'm gonna be areas in my skin where I had black all over my neck. I had blackness. It was such a nightmare. And the part that people kept saying to me, you're crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. So much right now because I can't deal with this by myself. It's too much, you know? So I would go to church and they noticed that something was wrong with me because I'm usually like very peppy, you know, whatever, alive. But I would sit at church sometimes and I'm like, and I would have like almost asthma attacks and panic attacks in the middle of service. I'm like, and they would be like, what's going on? Anyway, so a couple people approached me. And when I finally found out what was wrong with me, they're like, so what was wrong with you? And I told them, and then several of them were like, wow, I went through that. I went through the same exact thing you did. And then a lot of them went and got tested, and they were having the same exact symptoms as me. They also had mold in their bodies. I was just
Wow.
bawling because I was like, Lord, I don't want to go through this anymore. I'm done. Like, just, rid me of this pain. And I remember him saying very clearly, you're not going through this just for you. I'm going to change this. I'm going to turn this around, and many people are going to be healed through your testimony. And I'm going to be honest. I said, Lord, I don't care about anybody else. Can you just heal me? Yes. Every time I would leave my house, my symptoms would get worse because the very thing that I would not go anywhere at one point. I was just at home the whole entire time. So the very thing that was killing me was the very thing I was attached to.
But then, so you went to the doctor, the natural doctor, they found out it was mold, and they started taking you through a process to cleanse your body. But during all these doctor visits and hospital visits, that had to be like draining you guys financially.
Oh my goodness. So prior to me getting sick, my dream has always been to be a homeowner. Okay. And to some people, this is like, well, this is a dream everybody has. But to us, it almost seemed as ministers, it's a little bit complicated sometimes, you know?
Right.
So we had been saving so much for a couple years, trying to get, savings enough to get a down payment for a house. And we had just about enough as we needed, you know? And all of a sudden, I get sick. And then we had to spend we drained all of our savings.
You guys were wanting to have a second child and you got pregnant. Then what happened?
So I had a miscarriage, like in the middle of everything. So I got sick. We lost the house. We were homeless for a little bit. I know this might not be important to some people, but my dog ran over, which was my dog. In the middle of the battle, like a lot of people abandoned us. At least that's how I felt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think sometimes, Madai, people don't know how to respond. They don't know what to say. And so sometimes I think it's easier to just kind of disappear than to walk with you through it, because they don't know what to say, what to do.
The promises of God was what held me, literally. I'm like, okay, this hasn't happened. This hasn't happened yet. This hasn't happened. So if it hasn't happened, his word has not come to pass yet. So he's not finished with me yet. So I literally held on to that word.
Madai, thank you so much for being so real and willing to put your story out there. And now suddenly you've got your house, your baby is coming in just a couple of weeks. How exciting is that? God is so faithful.
Yeah, like even in the midst of like being pregnant, like the enemy has tried to attack so many times. But at the beginning of the year, the Lord kept saying, I kept hearing the Lord saying, you're going to birth daughters this year. And I thought, okay, well, maybe in the spiritual, I'm going to birth daughters. But I think it was both literal and spiritual. And so I was like in the middle of even this pregnancy, they're trying to give me a bunch of pregnancy scares. But I'm like, no, the Lord told me I'm birthing daughters this year. So I'm birthing this daughter. And I'm like, she's the fulfillment of the promise of my healing. When I got pregnant, I actually started getting better. So go figure. So I am actually walking in my promise right now in this season. So I would say, hold on to your promise, because that's what's going to get you to the other side. And the Lord is faithful. When I sing about the goodness of God or the faithfulness of God, it doesn't come from a place of not knowing, but it comes from a place from understanding that it's true, because he's been faithful, because he's been good. Thank you, guys.
Amen. Sweet woman of God, you've heard her story. And if you are one of those that you're in that place that you feel like, oh, I don't even know if I can even go to church anymore. Whatever you're facing, hang on to the promises of God. You're not alone, sweet friend. We love you and we'll be praying for you. I'm going to leave my email address right here. You are welcome to email me, and I will personally email you back and pray for you. I trust that this has encouraged you today. If you know of anyone else this would encourage, feel free to share this video. Thank you, my friend. God bless.
Thank you for watching Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. I look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to leave me comments down below, and make sure and subscribe. If you want to know every time a new video is coming out, hit the bell. I would be so delighted if you would also hit the like button, and feel free to share this video with anyone you know that this would encourage. Blessings, my friend.